Hello, and welcome back to the use and abuse of Laura Endicott. This time we begin chapter the second, How Useful. As I disembarked the trap with all of my 3 suitcases and equal number of satchels laid out on the imposing steps that appeared to wash out of the heavy bolted doors as if in a frozen waterfall, their marbled fascia cracked and chipped, with the entire scene overcome with ages past, an elderly fellow emerged, pushing the creaking doors outward and fastening one of them to a bronze bolt set into the adjoining stone of the entranceway. Clearly this must be the butler, or at least the manservant. The trap driver had peremptorily waved his adieu and tipped his felt cap at me. He had given me a grin of encouragement at the last, and somehow this got me up the steps to be greeted by the early emissary of the place. "You must be Miss Endicott. I am Hargreaves, the estate manager." I tried not to peer back at his own quizzical expression. I nodded with expectation and was ushered inside the keep. His presumed title complicated matters in an instant, for such a role might well have within its duties the accounts of the place. He was physically infirm, but clearly the same could not be said of his mental capacities, betrayed at once by the clearness of his voice. He had wasted not a moment of introduction. I was seated in a kind of large salon, 1 room removed from the very front of the house. Aside from the usual furnishings, it featured a huge mirror and equally large fireplace, in which muttered several healthy oaken logs. I was immediately warmed, and then Hargreaves, seeing my glance, attempted to do the same for my frame of mind. "From a recent fell. There are many almost ready to succumb to a similar fate. Deadfall, I think such trees are called, at the end of their long lives." "I would imagine there are many such resources indigenous to the property," I suggested to him, aware of his alertness. He nodded, then looked thoughtful. "The greatest of which is its rich history, I do declare. You are a student of such things." "Not I, at least not formally. I convocated with a degree in English. I also teach music and singing." "A pianist, no doubt." "Quite so, and such a place as this must possess. Indeed, though I am not the one to tune it, you understand, not at my age and with my hearing. After your interview I would be delighted to show you the music room, as well as where the grand instrument resides." For a moment I was confused, but then it dawned on me that anyone who lived in this manner would have in fact 2 pianos, likely an upright in the conservatory, and a much more exclusive instrument in some sitting room, whereupon it could be performed in front of an audience of guests. Something stirred beneath my belly at the thought of playing it, and in front of the family and its visitors. For that matter, I could play far better than I could sing, but this was not a regret. I had not truly sung for Philip, since unaccompanied and in dulcet undertones, so as to not disturb the other hotel patrons. It too had a piano, but upon trying it the once I found it so woefully out of tune that it was unplayable. I had higher hopes for at least one of its kindred here. "I should like it very much, but I do not wish to presume. Already I had the sense that the older fellow would be able to interrupt a young woman, so I let him have at it, puzzled retorting, letting him pick up any potential ellipsis. It was itself an old trick, perhaps even ancient. It was one of the great marks in favor of Philip's character that he never had put a word in, as it were, when I was speaking. Part of that was simple adoration and the shyness always brought about when one is in the very presence of the beloved. I speak of it that way, one's very presence, due to what is human being present elevated into something which, at least in the eye of the beholder, transcended its very humanity. Sir Hugh has already informed me that he wanted a contract drawn up, which I should see about executing at this time. You will thus excuse me, Miss Endicott." Good heavens! How is it possible that through an advertisement alone, clipped and in hindsight quite uninformative as it was, one could hope to predicate such an action on the part of a prospective employer? I fought down my own guard, lest it lose me the opportunity entirely and ahead of its time, as it were. A night, then, and of which order, I wondered not quite idly. Another cast round revealed nothing relevant. The logs now crackled and the blaze flared in a cheery manner. It reminded me that auburn and pale blue did disagree, depending on the lighting. My hair and eyes were not generally complimentary, nor did they yet complement one another. Lost in this somewhat base self-reflection, I had to look up quickly. "Ah, Miss Endicott, wonderful. Your note sent on from the press made no attempt to honor your actual presence, I see." This must be, in fact, Sir Hugh, a tall, spare man wearing the fashions of a decade ago. I had arisen to be greeted and dipped to him, not fully, but neither summarily, given his title, as well as from the fact that I needed a job, and immediately so. He waved it off after a slight bow in return, and indeed, I needed to first respond to his transparent compliment. Knowing Philip was so full of me, after all, I had given him my soul upon his departure, as already noted, I chided myself for once again bringing it to the front of my mind. I felt I could be relaxed with any other gentleman. I would present myself, Sir Hugh, as a role model in the arts for anything that might seek to merely mimic art, was how I put it. For a moment he looked taken aback, but anyone in his position and with his status could never be at a loss for long. For all I knew, he was in Parliament, or had been. Well put, Miss Endicott, and yet my two daughters are so far removed from either that at first I would wonder if you yourself might not conflate the two. Ha! That was almost a ringer. It told me that I was very likely correct in my surmise about a possible political career. But if so, why on earth respond to a local advert placed by a recent university graduate with no experience for said role at hand? I am myself honored by your response. Given this, it could only be said to be unexpected. I had whisked one hand round while speaking, but he shook his head gently, smiling with sincerity, as he cast his eyes up and upon me, and I could see that they were those of an honest person. No, not that. Honest but in the moment, thus a person who was capable of honesty. This I knew to be an important difference. It was, in fact, one of the chief aspects of character that distinguished myself and Philip, he being the superior person to this regard. Sir Hugh then might well be a kindred spirit to yours truly. Not at all. The modesty of your original advertisement was attractive, for I am seldom down in London now, having elected, shall we say, not to pursue re-election. I nodded, both to him and to myself. I needed to remain sharp, oh, so sharp, and not just against the mysteries which would have to lurk in an estate as old as this one, but the more so against my own emotions. Playing at guessing games about the principles at hand was one minor way of staying so. But what was most intriguing, young lady, was your declaration regarding making yourself generally useful, and I quote. He blinked at me in an altogether amiable manner. Much better than a wink, thank goodness. I resisted dipping once again. I was not 13 and standing in front of the headmistress's vast and littered desk. Neither was I 17 and graduating from her otherwise dismal establishment. Now I had to blink back such memories and jut my chin up. I thought that my documented accomplishments might be viewed as somewhat paltry. That is also most intriguing. Pardon me, given the potential allusion to those undocumented, but it does make my essential query the more palatable. And that is, sir? The only question that can arise following such a declaration as does your advertisement make must be just how useful, Miss Endicott, are you prepared to be? Aha. Yes, I suppose that would be the question. I sought to intercept. As need should arise, I would imagine, within my general capability. Oh, dear Sir Hugh, I'm begging the question now. Unavoidable, my dear Miss Endicott. It shows me you have both integrity and manners, though in this house the former is the greater test. Needless to say, your duet of charges also possesses neither of these further essentials. His accompanying grin made me smile back at him in return. Surely he was exaggerating the task at hand. I am sure I can adjust their trajectories. I am not at all concerned about that, in fact, but just so, in employing you, Miss Endicott, I am about to adjust yours. The question remains, and your response, which I take to not be deliberately evasive, given that it was you who placed the ad, wagers a rather large carte blanche in my direction, does it not? In an honourable house, I fear no risk of such unwritten check. Indeed. Well, as some authors like to suggest, they are one thing and their books another. Once again, just so, Miss Endicott, you may find that this house is one thing, and those who reside within another. Quite so. Oh, dear. Well, honesty once again. In place, without giving too much away. I managed to look at him up and down without too much indiscretion. He was yet handsome, in a washed-out, very English way. If he were to make intimate advances, I could bear them. Philip and I had not formally been engaged, our lovers' vows rather the stuff of legendary romance, he Tristan and I Isolde, with hopefully far better fates ahead. With that hurdle out of the way, it was difficult to imagine what else he might ask of me that would put me out, so to speak. Of course, the old adage about being careful about the character of one's desires was firmly in play as well. If intimacy was on his mind, and no man with whom I had spent any time with at all was not drawn to me immediately and seemingly irresistibly, it had made for a vexing series of university encounters with both fellow students and, of course, much more seriously, faculty. Then more fool him. I would not allow any chance of pregnancy. But I also had grave suspicions in that regard about my own capabilities, to reuse that word. Philip and I had loved with reckless abandon, though it were only a fortnight. There was not a sign of lasting imprint from all of that. And a fellow of Sir Hugh's age could not compare with the coltish animation and acrobatics of someone like Philip. I shuddered a little, and my host was at once tending the fire. "Oh, no, Sir Hugh, a memory, that was all." "Have you left someone behind, then?" "Rather, he left me behind, one might say." "Oh, I cannot admire his taste in all that." I could not stifle a chortle. "You make me laugh, Sir Hugh, as if I were the Cleopatra of our modern age. No, he and I are committed, but such a vow does not impinge upon any duty I may encounter here." I pointed to the floor at this moment, wondering if he would make the connection. A framed oil facsimile of Raphael's School of Athens hung upon one of the salon walls. As I pointed downward, I threw my eyes in its direction. "Very good, Miss Endicott. I see you are a young lady harboring the wisdom of practicality within your intellectual breast. I am not a metaphysician myself. No one in politics can afford such luxuries, and thus I truly admire a person who understands reality in all of its forceful vicissitude." At my age, I doubt it. I smiled even so, and he responded in kind. "Yes, but equally at your age, you are much more likely to have the sheer stamina to endure that same reality." I would, without vanity, suggest that this is the only manner in which human beings become experienced. To this his visage now took on a more serious timbre. "Our question has thus migrated, then. Perhaps we should reframe it by asking after the scope of the reality to which you are prepared to apply your nascent wisdom." But I did not follow his lead, for it was not confidence that was providing my mount, but rather a kind of callow carelessness. "Sir Hugh, what I present to you is a young woman with whom you shall have no need to mince words. That is the truer scope of my talent." "Then from this moment on, Miss Endicott, I shall not expect you to indulge in any such thing, at least not with me, and goodness knows not with my daughters, who appear to respect nothing else. Are you comfortable with discipline, may I ask?" "Discipline comes from within. It cannot be taught by external means and mandates." This was a bit of a hazard, but one I knew he would likely respect. "Such a goal is afar, but in principle I agree with you, of course. I shall leave it to you in your authority to dispense discipline as you see fit, or to dispense with it. Where were you before Cambridge, might I inquire?" "Hilliard's." "Ah, perhaps enough said, then. Hilliard's, good Lord! And yet you have emerged unscathed in character, I venture." "The greatest misfortune that could happen upon a child turned into a significant blessing. The headmistress took pity upon me, and I have never been myself disciplined. I loathe it, even so, witnessing its effects upon my schoolmates." "It is certainly an ongoing scandal, with regard to girls at least, I will say that much. But this tragedy—" "My parents were both killed in a railway wreck when I was 13. I was summarily sent off to Hilliard's by the family executor, all accounts paid in advance." "Good God! Let me see, 7 years or so ago. The Round Oak accident." "The very one. 14 dead and another 50 injured. That would be back in August of '58. Such a date is like yesterday to someone of my age." "Fortunately not to someone of mine." "Quite so, yes. Good Lord! Now I begin to understand a little more your acumen, Miss Endicott. Your adolescence was abruptly truncated." "In more than one way. But do not extend to me the laurel of charity, Sir Hugh. I whisked through university due to my academic ability, which I must admit was gained through patient study at Hilliard's, though little else could be said to have been gained at such a place." "Yes, no doubt. Of course the existence of the board schools is one pressing reason for your current employ, Miss Endicott. I refused my wife's demand to send our 2 girls away to any one of them. Such a brief synopsis of your experiences only underscores the correctness of my decision." "Correct in both a moral and sentimental way, but I dare speak not of being able to equal these in terms of intellectual development." "Ah! You no doubt do yourself an injustice, but no matter. Sarah and Olivia are already too clever, and by half. Whatever actual nonsense fills their heads can be righted with time. Do you play the piano, by the by?" "Yes, sir, but I am no Chopin." "Well, well, who is? Can I impinge upon you this very night? I have a dinner party, small, and not to be concerned. I do not employ a large staff here." "Who is present, may I ask?" "You have met my assistant, Hargreaves. He is solid, if unimaginative. But a servant with too much imagination is not a servant over long. There is the cook, Rachel, and the lady's maid, one Violette, from France, good Lord. The property upkeep is done by contract. Neither my wife nor I are comfortable with too many live-ins, you understand. But that's it. I need to show you to your rooms. I see that Hargreaves has already taken your luggage up." He mentioned that he was to take me on a tour after our interview. "Not he. I myself shall escort you. You are a stellar presence, Miss Endicott, and as such, possessed of both an enduring light and heat. But that said, your light might reveal what has hitherto been unyielding to previous scrutiny." "And my heat might thence burn it." He stopped and gave me a look. "Indeed, Miss Endicott, your heat is very much capable of doing just that."